All right, you're watching Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. The time in the nation's capital approaching 10:45. We are getting some news that the U.S. military, according to Reuters, this is one of their reporters, carried out a new strike earlier today against a suspected drug vessel in the Caribbean, and in what is believed to be the first such case where there were survivors among the crew on the boat that was targeted. Hal Kempfer is standing by here. By the way, Lucas Tomlinson says 2 to 3 survivors were suspected from this suspected drug smuggling submersible, Tomlinson calls it, destroyed in a drone strike. He says it's not clear if they were rescued. Hal is standing by with me. Hal worked under U.S. Southern Command on the war on drugs. He follows this stuff closely. How does the inclusion of potential survivors change the calculus this time around?
Well, it's fascinating, and by the way, it didn't say we rescued the survivors.
Right.
I'm still waiting to see what the disposition of those survivors were, but that does change it. Up to this point, we haven't seen any survivors, and it's unclear who would rescue them or who was rescuing them if we were going to try and affect the rescue. Based on where the semi-submersible, and I don't think it was a full submersible. I think that may have been it may have been shorthand for semi-submersible, because that's what they tend to use, are these low profile. They look like a submarine, but they actually, the conning tower always, and part of the upper structure of the vessel actually is always above the water. And it's, but rides mostly below the water. And that's a very common drug conveyance. But based on what they conveyed about that, it was probably in waters where we don't have search and rescue. It's not part of our search and rescue area, so it would be another country would do that. Potentially, it could be Venezuela would have to do the search and rescue. With that said, if we have the ability, and we certainly have a rather large flotilla down there, naval flotilla, and it's possible we could launch a helicopter or a tilt rotor or something and rescue those individuals who are in the water. Then the question becomes, what is their legal status? Now we have said that these drug vessels and these groups, these organizations like Tren de Agua are terrorists. They're not just drug trafficking organizations, but they're actually terrorist groups. And so the question then becomes, what is their status, legally speaking? And it does make me wonder, are we going to try and take them into the U.S. judicial system and try them? Would we try them in another country's judicial system that's in the region? Would we take them up to Guantanamo and hold them in Guantanamo in kind of that legal limbo status we had other terrorists? I don't know. So it's kind, and frankly, I would think some lawyers have probably war gamed this out to figure out what they do, but I don't know.
You know, this has been the Venezuela topic today. There's been so many developments and a lot of big ones, I might say. We heard earlier today that the admiral who leads U.S. military forces in Latin America will step down at the end of this year. He's going to be leaving 2 years ahead of schedule. That's according to Secretary Pete Hegseth. He announced this earlier today. It's a surprise move amid, of course, escalating tensions with Venezuela. A source familiar with the matter told Reuters that there had been tension between Admiral Alvin Halsey and Hegseth over operations in the Caribbean. The Pentagon, by the way, is denying that. Here's what Hegseth said on social media. On behalf of the Department of War, we extend our deepest gratitude to Admiral Alvin Halsey for his more than 37 years of distinguished service to our nation as he plans to retire at year's end. A native of Fort Valley, Georgia, Admiral Halsey has exemplified the highest standards of naval leadership since his commissioning through the NROTC program.
NROTC, yep.
NROTC, Hal would know better than me, program at Morehouse College in 1988. So Hal, how unusual is it for a military leader to leave 2 years early?
It's unusual. Usually when something like that happens, it means they got fired, essentially, or relieved of command. Although there could be other reasons. I've seen general officers, flag officers retire early because of health reasons or family reasons. That does happen. It is really not clear why he's leaving. It's surprising to me because he just took over that command not this summer but the summer before last. So he's only been in there a little over a year. I think what 15 months maybe. And normally it's you will stay in that command for up to 4 years. I have seen it where they stay in the command for 2 years. That sometimes happens. But to leave after 15 months or 18 months or whatever, that's very unusual. And I'm thinking there's probably something to be said there that he was probably locking horns, if you will, with the Secretary of Defense. And that's the thing with those commands. They go directly. Technically, they go directly to the president, but they work. They are that is they are the regional. They are the combatant commander for that region, and so they interface with the Secretary of Defense in ways that other general officers don't. And so they have when it comes to policy in the Caribbean, Central America, South America, they go right to the Pentagon. And yes, they talk to the Joint Chiefs, but actually they deal more with the Secretary of Defense and with the President directly. So he may have been at odds on our policy change, potentially with Venezuela or something like that, or the targeting of vessels. And maybe they just decided the best thing to do was for him. He probably may have decided the best thing to do is step aside.
Halsey putting this statement out saying it's been an honor to serve our nation, the American people, and support and defend the Constitution for over 37 years. Effective December 12th, I will retire from the U.S. Navy. Serving as your commander and deputy for the past 34 months has been a tremendous honor. The Southcom team has made lasting contributions to the defense of our nation and will continue to do so. I'm confident that you will forge ahead, focused on your mission that strengthens our nation and ensures its longevity as a beacon of freedom around the globe. Stephanie and I extend our deepest gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to have served alongside our nation's finest warfighters. Keep charging, he says. As you and I have alluded to, Hal, it's been a very, very busy day on the Venezuelan front. Looking at some video here of Nicolas Maduro. President Trump, we've learned in the past 24 hours, says that he has authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations inside Venezuela and said that he was weighing carrying out land operations on the country. As we know, in recent weeks, the U.S. has carried out a series of deadly strikes against alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. This is what some of those videos have looked like. We've watched them. Basically, every strike that's happened, we've seen a video of it. And by the way, I will note, we have not yet seen a video of today's strike that included survivors. U.S. forces have destroyed at least 5 boats since early September, Hal. 27 people have been killed. 4 of those vessels originated from Venezuela, according to the AP. But of course, the one thing that really stands out is the idea of land operations, potential land operations. What could that entail?
Well, it could be a variety of different things. I would point out one thing, though. Maybe the reason we're not seeing the video is because it may not be quite the same. With a semi-submersible, you may not have that sort of spectacular video that you saw because most of the vessels actually below water. So there may be a reason why they're withholding that, or they may be withholding it because of the way that the weapon interfaced with or targeted or hit the semi-submersible, and they maybe looked at it and said there's something there we don't want people to see. So anyway, it could be a lot of reasons. But if they go after land targets, it could be a number of things. It could be something right out of a Clancy novel, where they maybe go after a drug laboratory or drug production facility or places where they have drugs. Could be that. Could be other nodes that are tied to the drug trade that are down there. So, it's very possible. Right now, they're only, as far as I know, there has been some discussion about doing strikes in Mexico. That is a big diplomatic back and forth between the U.S. and the Mexican government, obviously. But with Venezuela, there really isn't any discussion with Venezuela, the government, on what we would do there. And so they might do strikes along those lines. As far as I know, we don't have the forces massed to do an invasion of Venezuela. I know there was some discussion that this would be something leading to a full-on invasion, but even though our forces off the coast are fairly robust and very capable, that's not an invasion force that's going to go in and take over Venezuela, by military means. So it could be that, and then again, when the president was basically admitting that that was apparently that was a New York Times, I believe, leak or something that they said that we were looking at doing covert operations along those lines, and possibly the issue of possible regime change as part of that came up. That the president said he said, yeah, I did authorize covert operations, which as a career intelligence officer, I'll tell you, it's always a little uncomfortable when you are involved with a covert operation, which everybody knows about. Kind of gets into the definition of the term covert operation. So, um, if but then again, deception is the art of war, shall we say? And I wouldn't be surprised if they said that or even put that out there to get Maduro to start chasing his tail, looking around his government to find out who's working for the CIA. Inevitably, he'll start taking out folks that are actually loyal to him if he does that, and that may be part of why we did that, was to cause something like that to occur within the Maduro government, Maduro regime.
You know, we saw some reporting from the Wall Street Journal today saying that Venezuela, and this just came out within the past hour or two here, the journal is saying that Venezuela is moving troops into position on the Caribbean coast, and they're mobilizing what President Nicolas Maduro asserts is a millions strong militia. What do we know about what Venezuela is capable of?
Now, their militia ain't much. These are mostly civilians. These are folks that maybe held a weapon, 10 or 20 years ago or whatever, and they just throw a weapon in their hands, and go do stuff. Look, I haven't seen anything that indicates that we do have an amphibious ready group off the coast. We have a Marine Expeditionary Unit, but we don't have the sort of forces that would do a a maneuver from the sea in the force levels necessary to take over, to do an invasion in order to overthrow the government. It's just simply we don't have those forces there to do that. What we do have the forces there to do are a variety of raids and other types of special operations, and that may be something they do. Now, if he wants to put all of his forces on the coast to defend against amphibious operation, well, I'm sure somebody at Southern Command says, great, go ahead. That's a pretty expensive thing to put, to mobilize a million-man militia or million-person militia, and then to put all your forces on the coast against something like this. And frankly, if they move them there, that means they moved them from somewhere else. So, I don't. It looks like it's more for show than anything else, because I can't imagine it provides them any real advantage from a military standpoint.
So one other thing, Hal, that we've had to be keeping track of here, and again, lots of headlines coming out about Venezuela today. You saw this, no doubt. 3 B-52 bombers were taking off from Louisiana, and they flew near the coast of Venezuela earlier this week. It was yesterday. It was on Wednesday that this happened. This appeared to be the U.S. carrying out a show of force. B-52s, these things are big. What strategic purpose could flying B-52 bombers near Venezuela serve in a U.S. military posture? Does it signal intent, deterrence? What does it signal?
It signals that we have tremendous capabilities that the Venezuelans don't have. And also putting it close to the coast like that, it sends a signal to the Maduro regime. And it says, look, we can put stuff in here that you can't stop. And with that particular, with the B-52s, and I would point out that these planes have been retrofitted so many times. I don't know if there's any original parts from when the planes were built way back when that are still on the plane. But they can drop a number of munitions that have standoff capability, so that the planes don't actually have to fly over Venezuelan air or into Venezuelan airspace, and they have a huge load capacity. So just flying those next to the coast, I mean, Maduro could literally go online to Wikipedia and find out what a B-52 is capable of carrying, and that would probably make him think twice about confronting the United States militarily. And it certainly would tell him, if he was planning anything, for example, something where they want to confront us at sea for any reason, that we do have capabilities that we can put in the area very quickly. And sometimes it's important to remind other countries, particularly countries where we're having some very tense relations with, that we do have some of these capabilities. and it has a very sobering effect on their thinking. So, but unusual. We don't normally put strategic bombers into situations like this. We tend to keep them very far away from harm's way just because of what they are and what they do.
So, I guess one final point on all of this Venezuela stuff is where does this go from here? And it's a big question, but I think it's an important one because you and I have been talking week after week after week, strike after strike on drug boat after drug boat. Another strike happened today, and now this show of force off the Venezuelan coast. I'll ask you a question that I've asked you before, but if boats continue to get struck, are they going to find other ways to bring what they want to bring to where they want to bring it?
Oh, absolutely. The drug traffickers are going to try and find other ways. In fact, it's interesting that today they struck a semi-submersible. Now, that's something they have. It's not something it's like some new concept. They've been using semi-submersibles for a long time. But it tells me that in that sea space, that they looked at the vulnerability of doing fast boat movements. And I'm not saying they were taking those fast boats up to Florida or something, but they were probably taking them to some islands in the Caribbean and using those as a transit point to get them into another conveyance to eventually get them to the United States. But it says that they've seen the vulnerability of the fast boats. So now they're going to the semi-submersibles. Now we've hit a semi-submersible. That's going to change their math because from a maritime standpoint, now they're running out of things that they can use. So now they might try to do more overland stuff. If they go the overland route to get the drugs up to the U.S., that takes Venezuela, to a large part, out of the equation. If the drug trafficking organizations can't transship drugs from Venezuela, to wherever they got to go, then all of a sudden the revenue going to these drug trafficking organizations is going to drop immensely because the drugs, Venezuela doesn't actually grow. They don't have coca trees there. They're not growing coca, which is what's used to make cocaine. The coca leaves are. That actually comes from the Andes, and usually that's like Upper Colombia, Bolivia, various different places. There's a section in the Andes in the mountains where the coca trees grow particularly well. That's not in Venezuela. Venezuela's role in this was being a transit area. You send it to Venezuela and you can move it throughout the country without it ever being bothered and get it out of there. Well, if they can't use Venezuela, that is going to have a dramatic impact on the revenue going to the Maduro regime and the revenue going to these drug trafficking organizations, which would be very destabilizing to both the regime and to the position of these trafficking organizations, which is exactly what the U.S. would probably like to, or that is what the U.S. wants to see. So.